Obviously, the blue economy getting a lot of attention, deserved, one might say, because, of course, it's now had for the first time in the country, or in a long time, has its own ministry, and we hope to make the most of it. But let's go to a pressing issue at this time in the country. Just this morning, I mean, a lot of people would have noticed fuel queues on your way, petrol fuel queues, and we've heard stakeholders saying the issue of ethics. And then, of course, we know what's going on with major oil producers. We just read about the movement in oil prices. Let's try and find out what's going on right there and hope that this is not another long-term fuel queues at this time. Joining us for that conversation is a senior analyst, financial derivatives company, Mr. Clement Igbounugwu, joins us virtually from Victoria Island. Mr. Igbounugwu, thank you so much for your time. Now, do we know what's causing this? I thought, we're done with this, but obviously it's a temporal relief we got there. Do we know what's going on now?
Yeah, good morning. I think my guess is as good as yours. You know, as at the time that the reforms began, the subsidy removal and all of that, and then we had that there was deregulation of the downstream sector. So I also thought that we have said bye-bye to long and terrible queues. But we've seen queues resurfacing in Lagos and other major cities in recent time. And that followed I believe is a kind of speculative move. Because remember that a few days back, the group managing director of NNPC said that NNPC is now the sole importer of PMS. And Nigeria is a PMS economy, so to say. And when he made that comment, market has already started reading into it that, oh, that means that we are not going to have that kind of large supply as we're expecting, that given the fact that private players are giving a license, that is going to increase supply in the petrol space. And so that's speculative, because remember the uncodified rule there is that you buy on the rumor and sell on the news. And so the marketers began to hoard product in anticipation that is going to you are going to have scarcity. But the biggest problem in it is, why are we going back to where we thought we've left? The group managing director was saying the reason why they returned as the sole importer is because the private players could not access forests, but they can create, in his word, we can create forests. And for me, it's not a good thing for NNPC to be the only organization that can create forests for the economy. So I think that issue of access to forests becomes a very big issue. But beyond even access to forests, is the fact that the global oil price has risen to around 90 from around 73 at the time that subsidy was removed. And exchange rate has moved, let me use the parallel market, from 760 at the time of the reform to over 1,000, about 1,010, 1,100 naira at yesterday. The implication is that if the price of the pump price was 600 as at the time of reform, now it should be anywhere above that. And if we use the diesel price as a benchmark, which now is over 1,000, it means that the PMS could even be way above 1,000. But if the PMS is to be sold at 600, do you think the private players will be able to play? Even if they have access to forests, which market are they going to sell? Because they're going to get it at a landing cost that is higher than the market price. And so what we don't know is, what is the pricing scheme? What government is not also saying clearly is there a subsidy? Who is paying for the subsidy? How is the subsidy being financed or being paid for? And so all of these things that are shrouded in secrecy, lack of transparency, is really affecting the market. And I tell you, one of the new lexicon that has entered into the Nigerian macroeconomic evaluation is the petrolflation. Petrol PMS particularly can lead to 5% increase in inflation in a year. And so if we have, now we know that whatever that happens to the PMS, because the price is no more controlled, but even at that, whatever we have seen it play, that whatever that happens to the PMS has tremendous impact for the household. The household is already squeezed, don't forget, at per capita income of 1,755 naira and annual cost of living of $1,755, annual cost of living at $7,400, the Nigerian household is already squeezed and on edge. And so if you're going to put in this pressure again on the household, that's going to be quite tremendous. And I think there's need for urgent attention to ensure that this does not escalate. And that's not going to be good for businesses because of operating costs and all of that.
Yeah, well, I think you said a new term, at least for me now, petroflation. I think that's one thing that's really hurting us. But as you noted, there are so many uncertainties. Are we paying subsidy or not? The private sector is supposed to be players in the petrol supply chain for a couple of months now. We haven't really seen that. And we're still going back to the issue of FX, you know, which, I mean, I don't know, is there a short-term solution to this FX issue? It's affecting everything in our lives, and that's just because our refineries are not working. I remember a promise from the federal government also that at least one of the refineries, which I think is the Port Harcourt, will be working before the end of the year. October is coming to an end. You know, there's so many uncertainties and promises that we do not see steps to actualization. There's the FX issue. Fine, the president has pronounced unification, but we see the gap still widening and the naira losing even more value. We saw news yesterday, our reserve has dropped even further. I mean, it just seems like so much being a Nigeria can be so stressful.
Talk is cheap, they say, and policy announcement is far different from policy impact. In fact, the gulf between the two is as a journey from here to Kafanchan. We have celebrated policy announcements, but we also need to see the policy impact. But you can't see all of this in it if we are not clear. The issue of transparency and believability of whatever government is saying they're going to do, because we're not seeing that consistency in all of those pronouncements or all of those announcements, and that's become a very big issue. In a look at FX, the quickest win is for you to come clean. If we don't know what the reserve is, the net reserve, because when the central bank is saying the moving average of the gross reserve, it means that we don't even know what the reserve is. So what is the capacity of the central bank to intervene in the FX market is unknown. There are many unknown. And so investors will not bring their money in. Remember that the capital importation report showed that Q2 capital importations plummeted by over 33%. That's huge, including even what we call hot money, the portfolio investment. Because investors will not bring their money when you have more than $6.8 billion of forward that are not settled. When foreign investors have committed their naira assets to the CBN to get dollars, and those naira assets are held hostage, all right, and they can't get it. So who is going to bring the money in order for you to have that inflow? As of today, we don't have any plan to expand production around the export corridor. We don't have that plan. What are we going to export in order for us to get FX? That plan is there, is not there. But what surprised me most, Sini, is that when I look at H1 2023 reports, I discovered that autonomous sources, FX inflow from autonomous sources is more than 60%. The CBN sources accounted for less than 40%. So it means that if we increase transparency, if we say we want to liberate the market, let's not do one and leave two. We are taking it in piecemeal without communicating the next step, and that is making it difficult for the market to read it out. So when we say we are doing willing buyer and willing seller, and we are not even sure whether it is free floating or managed floating, we don't know. And the next day we say, oh, we are lifting ban on 43 items, but we don't know whether we are going to pay the outstanding backlogs and all of that. Let it be clear. And I think as my boss had earlier solicited, that we should go to wholesale Dutch auction. Let's have this free play. Let's liberalize the market. And those that have effects that are holding it can bring it to all of these rules, restrictions, and all of that makes it difficult because people are afraid. They're not bringing out the effects. So those are people that are holding. Let me tell you, we have more effects that are not through the banking system than the ones that are through the banking system because people are afraid. They don't know what next. I can put it in the bank tomorrow and then there is a change of policy and I lose everything. And so I think the government needs to be clear, transparent, and be clear in communication and also be consistent in what it can do in the short run so that we can plug the low-hanging fruits.
I can confirm what you have said. Yesterday, I had a conversation with an individual that was wondering if he puts his dollar in his DOM account, if he will be able to, access it. And there's a whole lot of uncertainty about that also because we know what the former CBN boss, did with things around that. That's on the one side. On the other side, at the just concluded IMF and World Bank meeting, what IMF said, we see the policy reforms, but it's not wholesome. So that's obviously, what you have also referred to.
Exactly.
We see this on this side, but we don't know what's going on this side. On a third front, the BDCs had even asked government that they want to be captured into the formal sector, into the formal calculation, because a lot of remittances from individuals doesn't get to the CBN. And as you noted, 60% of those are not captured by the formal market. So I think it just goes back to what the IMF said. Let there be a wholesome, inclusive reform and implementation of these policies, reform that we're working on.
Yeah, you are very right. In one of the professional platforms that I belong to, people were fighting the IMF. People become very IMF phobia. Once you are having a talk with IMF, they say, oh, that's going to be chaos. That's going to be trouble. But that is not that. IMF is saying clearly what should be done. IMF will not come and do it. And what they're saying, like you rightly mentioned, is what we need to do. We need to be clear in our communication as to what we need to do, when we are doing that, and how we're going to get it done. There must be consistency in that communication. At the central bank, at the fiscal corridors, there must be that consistency. And let me tell you, Ini, one of the wrong assumptions we've worked with over the years is the fact that the CBN has to be the sole custodian of the FX. For crying out loud, the US dollar is a convertible currency and is tradable. And so if there's all this idea of CBN trying to bottle everybody in, we need to get it off the basket. If an organization or a company, maybe Shell, has FX to sell, they approach a bank and negotiate the terms of that deal and sell. And another person can come and have access to it. Okay, look at what happened when the CBN said people should not use their dollar balances as collateral. What people did is that, okay, they say, okay, we have had that. Now I can take my dollar balances from Zenith Bank and take it to a bank in the UK and get a bank guarantee from there and use it for collateral. Who is losing? We lost that liquidity. And so there must be thinking through in public policy so that we don't use one restriction and regulation to kill the gains we expect from long expected reforms, which are really underway.
All right, we actually took more than we should, but I guess it's a pressing issue affecting everyone and sometimes, really gets frustrating. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Clement Igbanugo, Senior Analyst of Financial Derivatives Company, for your time and your thoughts this morning.
Thank you very much, Ini. My pleasure.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, it's still about the macroeconomic factors in Nigeria. How it's affecting the real estate industry. We'll discuss that next.